Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden Mulcrone. Aiden, college football is here, finally, after a long off season. We're ready to go. We got a little bit of a taste on Saturday with Week 0. I don't know, were you able to watch any of the Week 0 stuff?
A little bit. Yeah, I caught some of the Vanderbilt and the USC game, but not much else.
Okay, my best friend's a Notre Dame fan, and so I watched the Notre Dame game in its entirety with him. And it was just fun to sit down and watch college football again for the first time in months. And then I did catch some of the Vanderbilt Hawaii game, and I didn't watch any of the USC game just because Pac-12 network, I don't have access to it, and that's part of the reason why the Pac-12 is going away soon, is because they put games on Pac-12 network and nobody ever can find them or watch them. So that's kind of par for the course for them. But no, it was great to watch some college football this past weekend, and now we get to dig right into Week 1. And obviously we don't have to wait as long to see Michigan State on the field for the first time as they get ready to take on Central Michigan on Friday. Mel Tucker is going to speak to the media tomorrow for game week availability. So looking forward to that tomorrow. And obviously there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered as far as starting quarterback, who's going to get that first carry at running back, who's going to be out there for wide receivers. Defense, I think we have a pretty good idea of where who a lot of the starters will be, but there's some spots in the secondary that we'll get answers to when they step on the field against Central. So yeah, just can't wait to get some of those questions answered this week, and just again watch Michigan State on the football field again for the first time. With that, we got a pretty good crop of viewers in here, so we'll go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with our game by game predictions for Michigan State this season. And that obviously starts with the Central game on Friday. So how we're going to do this is we're just going to go, again, game by game. We're not going to do scores today. We do predictions columns week to week that have a little bit more about each game, bold predictions, score predictions, what we expect to see type of stuff. So we'll reserve that for those individual weeks, but we're just going to go game by game through the schedule. And so with that, Central Michigan, probably don't have to spend a ton of time here, I don't think, Aiden, but I'll go ahead and give you the ball. And what do you expect to see when the Spartans take on the Chippewas on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can say that same thing about Richmond too.
Sure.
That I think both of those games, everyone expects them to win those. I know Central has had kind of some ups and downs the past couple of seasons. I know they were in the MAC championship 2 years ago, and then last year was a down year for them. But either way, I still think MSU wins that game pretty handily. I know that MSU has been notorious for kind of having slow starts in Week 1, no matter who the opponent is. But at the same time, I do think, they take care of business, and it's going to be a win, but there's a lot of other questions that are going to be asked leading up to that game, and there's going to be a lot of kind of hype around that game and importance around that game about, like you were saying, who's going to be starting at quarterback, running back, those receiver positions. Even a couple offensive line spots. There's still some open competitions, like one of the tackle spots as well. So we'll see, but I do expect the Spartans to start 2-0.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Obviously, those are games that you got to go out, and I think it's important how Michigan State looks in those games, not just that you go out and win the game based on what we saw last year with the way that the run defense struggled. I was actually kind of crunching some numbers today for a bold predictions column that I wrote about the whole season in general, and I was surprised that I knew Michigan State had really regressed in run defense last year, but in the Big Ten rankings, they went from 4th in the Big Ten in rush defense in 2021 to 13th last year in the Big Ten. I was kind of surprised by that. I knew, like I said, I knew it had regressed, but I didn't know it had regressed to that degree. So you want to see them control the line of scrimmage these first 2 weeks against an inferior opponent, against teams that they should be able to go out and handle fairly easily. Again, you don't want to downplay opponents, but these are games that they ought to win. So yeah, and Drew here says, you got to win both games by, close to 3 touchdowns. And in the comment section, like that's kind of what the expectation is. Like, I think Michigan State fans want to see something to get to build some optimism. There's a lot of, I don't want to say mixed feelings, but I feel like this fan base is split a little bit after what we saw last year. And so you need a couple of games where there's some good vibes flowing going into that week 3, which is a big game. But yeah, I think I see them also winning these first 2. I think they'll look good doing it. I think Michigan State selects a quarterback and sticks with that quarterback. That was part of my bold predictions that I wrote today. Was I think whoever wins the job, barring injury, is going to be the guy throughout the year. I don't know if I would have said that a few months ago, but just based on the vibe I've gotten from the coaches, it seems like they want to make a decision at quarterback and stick by that decision. So that's kind of what I expect, and I expect Michigan State to start 2-0. All right, with that caveat kind of out of the way, let's talk about like the meat of the schedule now, and that starts with Washington in week 3. Aiden, this is a game that, I think I've seen some optimism on social media and things from the Michigan State fan base about this week 3 matchup against Washington. They're ranked number 10 in the preseason AP, but we got some news last week that their starting running back, Cameron Davis, is lost for the season due to an injury. And so that's a bit of a blow to Washington's offense. So how do you see this game playing out, Aiden, with kind of all that taken into account?
Yeah, I mean, I think with MSU coming off 2 wins, I think there's some momentum that they can be riding off of. And I know that the game is going to be streamed on everyone's favorite streaming service, Peacock.
Yeah,
for that at 5 o'clock, which is also an interesting time.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a really competitive game, but I think the Spartans fall short. I'm going to say it's a loss, but I do think this is a really competitive game and kind of shows that there's a good amount of fight in this team, and that this team can really hang with, a team that's, ranked top 10 preseason and will be a pretty good team throughout the season, and compete for potentially a New Year's Six bowl.
Sure.
And just compete in the Pac-12. I don't really have Washington winning the Pac-12, but I do have them winning 9 or 10 games. So I think that's going to be just a fight. I think it's going to be a battle. But even with Cameron Davis out for them, I think just the amount of receivers and weapons that Michael Penix has, I think Washington has a case to have the best wide receiver room in the country. And I really do believe that they have one of the most loaded wide receiver rooms. And,
right.
It's not Ohio State level, but it's probably second. So yeah, I think that's chalked up as a loss right now for me.
Yeah, I think if Ohio State is that like elite tier when it comes to skill position talent, or especially wide receiver talent, I think Washington's that just one notch below that as far as like other teams across the country. This is a game that, despite the optimism that I've seen from portions of the fan base, kind of even throughout summer, I never felt good about from Michigan State's perspective. Just as you mentioned, like it seemed like their strengths were in areas where Michigan State's defense has just struggled the last 3 years. And I do kind of look at their offense as a little bit of a Ohio State light type of thing. The injury to Cam Davis has changed the vibes a little bit for me. I do think this could be more of a grinded out game now. I think it could be a closer game. Not that Washington is like a run heavy offense or anything, because they're not, but there's something about the vibes of losing a guy who's expected to be a starter that early in the season or before the season even starts. I'm just wondering where maybe Washington's at mentally after that. They have a couple of games to kind of adjust to it. So I'm in agreement with you. I still see this as a loss for Michigan State. I just don't know that they have the firepower on offense to be able to go blow to blow with Washington, but I do see this as a game that I think is under 10 points. I think Michigan State keeps it close, just doesn't have the offensive firepower to take them down. But again, there's optimism amongst the fan base. Tim D thinks he's one of those guys who thinks Washington is beatable. Keys to wisdom 3-0, and then it's ranked. So yeah, there's some optimism surrounding this game. This game is a little more interesting to me now than it was a month or so ago. Like I said, I just thought I didn't like the matchup for Michigan State. We'll see what happens in week 3, but for now, we both got them at Michigan State at 2-1 going into week 4, which is another home game against Maryland. How do you see that game playing out?
I gave them a win on this. I think they win this game. I think schematically they're similar to Washington on offense, and they have a really good quarterback in Talia Tagovailoa, who is returning. But I think what put them over the top last season was the amount of weapons that he had. And I think Maryland still has a good amount of weapons, but, MSU just played Washington the week before. So I think they have, a good idea of how to prep for that. And I think MSU takes a win at home. I think home field advantage definitely plays a role in this game. And yeah, and don't get me wrong, Maryland is going to be a pretty good team.
They're a solid team.
They're not up there with Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, but they're that next tier. And I would probably say if you threw them in the Big Ten West this year, that they would win it.
I think they have as good a shot as anybody to win the Big Ten West if they were on that side.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
Sure. No, I didn't mean that in
that
kind of way. But I agree with what you said as far as the division really hurts Maryland. One more quick note on Washington that I forgot to mention before we moved on. But if there's a way that Michigan State can pull that upset, and it was touched on by Keys to Wisdom here, is that with college football has changed its clock rule to where the clock doesn't stop on first downs until the last 2 minutes of each half. So if Michigan State is able to establish a run game and run the football and keep Washington's offense on the sideline, that gives you a shot. Like if you can shorten the game, churn out some yards on the ground, that's what gives them the best shot of upsetting Washington. But again, as of now, based on not seeing any game footage yet, we're both picking Washington. To Maryland, I agree. I think this is a game that was played early last year. Michigan State was kind of reeling from losses to Washington, and Minnesota got beat bad at home by Minnesota. They were competitive in this game, but again, the offense just didn't have the juice, the firepower to break through at any time. I think Jaden Reed missed this game as well last year. I could be wrong about that, but didn't have the offense to kind of. The defense actually played fairly well in this game last year.
Yeah,
I like that it's at home for Michigan State. I think that gives them an advantage. This is one of those 50-50 games that I can see going either way, but I'm going to also give the edge to Michigan State and say that they win this game. It's a game that, not that you're fighting for fourth place in the Big Ten East or anything like that, but like as far as division standings, that's one of the things that you kind of look at the end of the year. This is like one of those games where it could determine some division standings there. I think Michigan State gets it done and moves to 3-1 on the year. Moving on to the first road trip of the season, and that's at Iowa. Aiden, looking ahead to this game, a tough place to play in Kinnick, a place that I used to say, top 5 teams go to die because they had a string of upsets over top 5 teams there. So, what's your mindset heading into the Iowa game in week 5? And we both have them at 3-1.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of, optimism. I think even if they're going into that game 2-2, I think MSU can match up pretty well with Iowa just in terms of going against the run game. And I think what we've heard from the coaching staff this year and what they've been preaching is just physicality. And I think, looking at the schedule when you go down the line and you see at Iowa, at Minnesota, obviously Michigan is going to be physical. Penn State's going to be physical. But when you play those Big Ten West teams, they want to run the ball down your throat. So I think it's gonna come down to how can they match up front in terms of physicality. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game for both teams, but I actually have a little bit of cautious optimism that MSU gets the win on the road here. I think just again schematically, I think even with the addition of Cade McNamara and Eric All, I think that doesn't change their offensive play calling. I think that just changes who's at what position. So I think I give MSU another win, and I think they're 4-1 heading into Rutgers.
Okay. Trevor Thompson, hang around. I see your comment. We'll probably do like a end of season once we reveal like kind of what our records are. We'll talk what that means for Tucker based on that. So stick around. We'll get to your comment. Yeah, the Iowa game is one that I've kind of penciled in as a loss. Again, most of the offseason. The news about Cade McNamara changes the perspective on that game a little bit for me. And I don't know if people are unaware, I think it was their second scrimmage of fall camp. He kind of scrambled and kind of went down, a non-contact injury. He kind of topped the helmet and went out and didn't return. And there's been kind of this uncertainty about whether he's going to be ready for the opener for Iowa. And again, it's one of those, a non-contact injury is always a scary one. You don't know. And he had injury history at Michigan last year too. When he missed most of the year after getting popped early in the season last year. So that does change a lot when it comes to this game, just not knowing his availability. I think, to your point, I think this is a low-scoring field position, grinded out game, just because I don't think either offense is really built to take over games. I think Michigan State's defense is going to be improved this year. Iowa historically has had a good defense almost every year. So I see this as a field position struggle. Without knowing McNamara's situation, I'm still leaning Iowa just because, again, first road trip of the year, tough place to play. Mm-hmm. So this is where we're going to differentiate a little bit. I'm gonna stick with my Iowa pick for now, but that changes if McNamara is not available. If he's not playing this game, I'm switching my pick to Michigan State. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So you've got Michigan State at 4-1. I've got them at 3-2. And let's move on to a little bit. There'll be a bye week, and then they go to Rutgers in week 7. Yes, week 7. So yeah. What do you see in the Rutgers game? Another back-to-back road trips, but you get the bye in between.
Yeah, I think this is a win. I think Rutgers has improved, and I think they can compete for a bowl game, but I still think overall MSU is the better team. It's pretty obvious, and Rutgers has some quarterback issues that they got to figure out themselves. They're a little different than MSU's situation, but they're very similar. I think MSU still has better talent on the outside as well, that they win this game. And heading into the Michigan game, there's a strong possibility that could be a top 25 matchup if by my predictions, at least. Sure. If MSU is 5-1 with a competitive loss to Washington heading into that Michigan game.
Yeah, I like Michigan State in this game too. It's funny because Rutgers has been pretty much a dumpster fire the entire time they've been in the Big Ten. I don't think that's going on a limb to say that. But I will say I do think Greg Schiano has done a good job of at least making this a college football team. Like I'm not trying to be too harsh here, but like I'm trying to compliment Greg Schiano. I think this is a better Rutgers team than we've seen, or the Rutgers team we've seen the last couple of years under his leadership has been vastly improved from before. It's just that they play in the Big Ten East. They got to play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State every year. Now Maryland's getting better too under Mike Locksley. It's just a really, really tough job. So with that, like I just want to like tip my hat a little bit to Graciano. I think he's done a good job there. It's about as good a job as you can do. But no, I think Michigan State wins this game pretty, I don't want to say handily, but like is in control for most of the game. One of those games where, you know, you're in control from, you know, kickoff, you get an early lead, you hang on to it, you maybe win by a couple touchdowns type thing. So that's how I see this playing out. So I've got Michigan State at 4-2 heading into that next week against Michigan at Spartan Stadium. So you've got them at 5-1, and you're probably right. If Michigan State beats everybody except for Washington and is competitive against Washington, they're probably going to be in the top 25. And all of a sudden, we've got a ranked game on our hands in East Lansing. So, you know, talk us through that scenario, Aiden, a little bit.
Yeah. I was thinking about this before I read Drew's comment, but I'm going to refrain from giving a win or loss for this game. But I will say that, yeah, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of anticipation, even with that kind of foreign, you know, even if MSU is 4-2, like if they go and get a win on the road against Iowa, even if they lose to Washington and Maryland, or they, you know, any of those combinations that they're 4-2 or 5-1, I think that's huge for them. And I think there's going to be a lot of momentum riding into that game. But, you know, there's a lot of different things that go into that MSU U of M game. I think, you know, there's so many different factors. Obviously, you know, not bearing injury or anything, you know, weather is obviously, you know, a big deal too. I know a lot of Michigan fans have made excuses over the years for weather and everything like that. And I know a lot of MSU fans have had some issues with weather as well. But yeah, with that said, I mean, obviously it's a huge rivalry, and the night game could be a monster. And that could be you know, in a good way, I'd say. I think that could be really big. I remember I was in the student section for the 2021 game, and that was probably the loudest I've ever heard Spartan Stadium be. I think that game and the Oregon game in 2015 were probably the two loudest games I've ever been to. And I think this could top it if MSU is riding into this game at 5-1. But I will refrain from giving a win or loss for this game, though. So I'll still have them at 5-1 heading into Minnesota.
You're not gonna make a prediction?
Yeah, no, I'll give an 11-game prediction.
That's a cop out. That's a cop out. Well, I'm not gonna. I'll give a prediction for the game. So I wanna address Jason's comment on this game last year. I will say this Michigan won by 3 touchdowns last year. Like, I know it was a lot of field goals that Michigan had to kick, but I wouldn't call that barely winning. Just full disclosure, it was a 22-point win for Michigan last year in Ann Arbor. I will say, though, I think the emotions heading into this game are going to be very high based on what happened last year with the tunnel incident and how the vast majority of that came down on Michigan State. And I'm sure Michigan fans would say that was warranted because of, you know, the limited view that we got of the tunnel and as far as like how things started. We still don't know how things started. It was just we saw what we saw. So I think there'll be a ton of emotion. There always is for this game, but I just think it's heightened to another level. I don't think, to go back to Mike Valenti's comments from a few weeks ago, I don't think it's going to be that way outside the stadium amongst the fan bases. I think the fan bases will be fine. I think the tailgating will be fine. This is one of those rivalry games where you do see Michigan and Michigan State fans around the grill having a good time because that's what this rivalry has mostly been. But I think once we're inside the stadium, yes, it will be hostile. And I would argue it should be, just because when you have a home game and a rivalry, you want to give all of your energy to your home team. And so I do think it's going to be a jump in environment, even in my scenario where they're 4-2, even in a scenario where if they happen to lose another game and they're 3-3, like I still think no matter the situation, this is going to be a very loud, raucous, hostile environment. With that, I think Michigan State plays well in this game. I just don't. Again, it's kind of a reoccurring theme, but I don't think they have the horses to be able to go blow to blow with Michigan right now. Michigan has gone to another level these last couple of years under Jim Harbaugh, and I just feel like Michigan State's just not at that level right now. We've seen crazier things in this rivalry. We definitely have. 2020 was, nobody expected 2020. Now, we didn't know very much about those teams because of COVID and all that, but like Michigan was a 3-touchdown favorite going into that game. So crazier things have happened. Again, I just don't think Michigan State has the offensive pieces and the horses on offense to be able to go toe-to-toe with Michigan. So I'm counting this one as a loss, and so that puts it at 4-3 for me going into Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, Aiden, I'll go ahead and shift the conversation back to you, and we'll talk Minnesota. Another road game that against a Big Ten West team that's been pretty solid over the last several seasons. So where are you at with the Minnesota game?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a tough road environment. I know they're breaking in a new quarterback as well. And, it's going to be week 9. So I think, kind of in the, you're already in the swing of things. It's kind of getting towards the end of the season. I think Minnesota will be competing for the Big Ten West. I mean, I could say that about half the Big Ten West teams, because that they'll all be competing, because I think they'll have similar records. But I do think that's a loss for MSU. I think Minnesota is a really tough team, and you kind of saw how much MSU kind of got bullied in a sense last season, where Minnesota really didn't run anything that anyone didn't expect. Like they ran all the stuff that everyone expected. They ran, physical, they were fast, and that was kind of the start of MSU's downturn, I think, because last season everyone knew Washington was going to be a test, and then they competed and ended up losing by 2 scores, and then you go into Minnesota at home and then just get kind of absolutely they kind of got humbled in that game. So I think that's a loss for me on the road. Obviously just the state of Minnesota, it could be a blizzard in October.
True. That's true.
So you never know about that as well.
Yeah, no, I think the Minnesota game last year was when it was kind of like, uh-oh, and we kind of knew this team was in trouble, because going to the West Coast, we didn't realize how good Washington was at that time. They ended up being a top 10, finishing in the top 10, but we didn't know how good Washington was. And then the next week, again, at home, Minnesota, you kind of feel that as a 50-50 type game, and they just get pounded with the run game. And again, it kind of just killed all of the good mojo around the program. A lot of the fan base was upset, and understandably so. This is a game that I said this about in Iowa as well, but throughout the summer, I didn't feel good about predicting a Michigan State victory. Over the last, I would say, 2 weeks, my gut feeling on this has shifted, and I am predicting Michigan State to go to Minnesota and get a win there. So we're both at, well, you didn't give a prediction on the on the Michigan game, but we're both at 5 wins though at this point. Got a different route to get there, but I think I just, again, it's more of a gut feeling. I'm not sure what we're going to see out of Minnesota this year, just because Mo Ibrahim is not there anymore. They're going to have a new starting quarterback. I think TJ Flegg is a solid coach. I think he's done a good job in Minnesota. It's a vibe thing. It's a vibe thing for me right now. And I think Michigan State's going to beat somebody who, when you look at those, we've talked about the schedule a lot this summer, and you've got the 4 games against preseason top 10 teams or top 15 teams. And then you got road trips to Iowa and Minnesota. I think Michigan State's going to get one of those games. I'm almost tempted to say they might get one of those top 10 games. I'm not sure which or whatnot, but I wouldn't be shocked if they win one of those games. But I just feel good about this one for whatever reason. I think Michigan State goes into Minneapolis, gets a much needed road victory to kind of end a skid and get to 5-3 in my predictions. With that, we'll move on to another game that to me is kind of a sneaky tough game, and that's Nebraska at home. What's your mindset about this game, Aiden?
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska has kind of just always been a tough team to play, whether they're good or bad, and whether MSU has been good or bad. But I do think MSU gets a win here. I think Nebraska has a lot of moving pieces, and even late in the season, I think they'll have a little bit of trouble figuring it out. Where I think MSU kind of have some, pieces in place that they can figure stuff out. I know Matt Rule has always kind of struggled in his first year when he takes over programs, and kind of you can see the growth and the change once you get to like years 2 and 3. So I think this year is going to be a real struggle for Nebraska, and I really expect MSU kind of to just I think they can win up front. I think they can win offensively. Yeah, I just don't think Nebraska is there yet, and I think MSU can kind of not. I don't want to say waltz through this game, but I think they can take control of this game very early.
Yeah, I think Matt Rule was a really good hire for Nebraska. I think given the way things went with Scott Frost, I don't know that you could have done much better than Matt Rule, because he has had success at Baylor. He had success at Temple before then. The NFL gig in Carolina, that was a disaster, but I think he's a good college coach, has a track record of being able to rebuild programs. And so I think they did well to hire him. I just don't think the roster's in a good spot right now for this year, even with the transfer portal, even with what they've been able to bring in over the offseason. I think it's going to take, as you said, some time for Matt Rule to get things worked around in Nebraska, at Nebraska. So no, I like this game for Michigan State as well. It's at home. If it was in Lincoln, that's a little bit more of a dicey situation, because one thing about Nebraska fans is they're always going to show up no matter what the team looks like. They've had, it's been a minute since Nebraska's been even relevant, like on a national scale. It's been a long time since they've been relevant on a national scale, and yet they're still selling out Memorial Stadium a lot. So if this game was in Lincoln, I would feel a little bit more nervous for Michigan State. But given that it's at home, given what we have seen, or what I expect to see as far as the growth in Michigan State's roster and the foundation that Tucker has and the staff has built here, I do expect him to get the win here, and so they move to 6-3 in my predictions. With that, Aiden, we go to Columbus, where Ohio State is waiting. Talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, like I said about Washington, I think like you mentioned, they have an elite wide receiver room. I think, the quarterback battle, it's a competition, but I really don't think it matters that much, because both of those guys were, highly rated recruits, Elite 11 quarterbacks. And yeah, I don't really think it matters. I think Ohio State is still ahead of Michigan State, and I know Tucker has talked about countless times that kind of Ohio State is a bit of the bar, in the Big Ten, even before kind of Michigan. He said that before Michigan won 2 Big Ten championships in a row, but at the same time, there is a point that Ohio State still, has more talent than Michigan. I know that's kind of it's complicated, but they still do. Yeah, they still have more talent. So, Tucker has talked about kind of the bar and the expectation is kind of, getting to that level of competition with them. And I still don't think MSU is there yet. I think it's not going to be like it was the last couple of years where MSU just completely gets blown out of the water. But I don't think this is, I don't think it's 56-7 bad. I think it's I think it's still probably 2 or 3 scores, but I think this is the only game on MSU schedule this season where it's not competitive and where it's not, a one possession game or like a 10-point game. I think the rest of them will all be, between 10 points or less.
No, I think that's fair. Michigan State or Ohio State's strength is geared and aimed directly at Michigan State's biggest weakness, or what it has been over the last several seasons, and that's the secondary. And I like Jaden Mangum and Malik Spencer back at safety. That's what we expect to start back there. Charles Brantley, I think, is a solid corner, a solid to good corner. Dylan Tatum and a few other guys are kind of working for that other corner spot. But even though I do expect some improvement in the back end this year, it's still a young secondary that doesn't have a whole lot of experience. I wouldn't be surprised to see those young safeties take some lumps throughout the season, even though I like their potential to be very good in the near future. But Ohio State's just a machine, and this is also late enough in the year that whoever wins their quarterback battle, whether it be Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, he's had multiple games under his belt, and so he's the season starter by this time. And I don't like them. It's a horrible matchup for Michigan State. It's just not conducive to an upset, especially in Columbus. Again, can Michigan State run the ball a little bit better and keep Ohio State on the sidelines? I think they'll be better at that than they were last year, certainly. But again, it's that offense is deadly with Marvin Harrison, Emeka Ibuka, probably 2-3 other 5-stars on there. I could continue to go on, but you get the gist of it. I don't like the matchup for Michigan State, and so I have them dropping that one and falling to 6-4 through 10 games. With that, we stay on the road and head to Bloomington, where Michigan takes on Indiana. We all know how this game went last year. Michigan State, I believe, was up 17 at halftime and just had a disaster of a second half and a disaster of a kicking performance down the stretch, and ends up losing the old brass spittoon. So I think there's going to be it's funny. Like, my instinct would be like, yeah, you should be excited to get back at this game, but at the same time, it is Indiana. So I don't know where the mindset will be for the guys. But what's your thoughts heading into the Indiana game?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the guys who played last year, I think there will be a little bit of intensity and kind of build up for that week, just at least. And I think MSU really just takes control of that game. I think they, blow out Indiana. I think, again, like, the players who played will probably never forget that game. I know I won't forget that game because I was there and watching it. So for that reason, I think, yeah, MSU should win this game handily. I think, weather shouldn't play a factor in this at all. MSU just has the better talent. Having those guys healthy, obviously this is bearing injury, but there were a lot of injuries in that game, which led to, what happened and kind of a catastrophe just all around. So I think they really bounced back in this game. And, obviously I'm leaving out the Michigan record, or the Michigan game. So they're 7-3 heading into Penn State for me.
Okay. I think Indiana is probably my pick to finish last in the Big Ten East. I think even Rutgers finishes ahead of them this year. So yeah, obviously with that, I expect Michigan State to win this game. Again, I don't see, even though I just can't see them being competitive against Ohio State this year based on where we're at right now in late August. But I don't see that as like a demoralizing loss or anything like that. So I think they bounce back and this next week in Bloomington, get the old brass spittoon back, bring it back to East Lansing, and in my scenario, they're 7-4 now headed into that last regular season game against Penn State. And with that, I'll open the door for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State, I think this is just going to be an interesting game on and off the field. I think this is a good experiment playing in Ford Field, especially this game. I think, the engagement from the past years that MSU's had in their, final week of the season when it's Thanksgiving break has not been what they wanted. So I think bringing kind of the appeal to Ford Field, I kind of really like that idea, and I'm very much for it. I think that's going to be a sold out crowd, honestly. Whether or not that's going to be all MSU fans, we'll find out. So I think for that reason, I think that's pretty good. I still have them, losing in a competitive game, but I think kind of the indoors and all of that, I think that does benefit MSU a little bit, kind of playing in a little bit of climate control. I think, even for teams who are underdogs, I think, weather, weather being bad is a factor that can help them. But I think just MSU, I think they have good team speed. And I think, Penn State is more kind of, they want to play a little bit more power. And, Drew Allers, their new QB, and he's really good. But I think, it's a different environment.
Sure.
Just being indoors and everything like that. I think that's, MSU could be, in my predictions at least, like they have an opportunity to win between 7 to 9 games. So that could be the game that could push them through to a New Year's Six bowl potentially, or it could be the game where they're playing back at Ford Field in December. So that, yeah, I think that's just a game that you can get up for. I think for just MSU fans in general, I think that's a good rivalry. I think Tucker really values that rivalry because it is going away with, divisions and everything dissolving. So I think that's something that having some hardware before you lose a year or two before playing them again is something that Tucker values.
Yeah, no, this is an interesting game for me to look like. Number one, it's so far away just because it's at the end of the year, and so we're gonna know so much more about both of these teams by the time we get there. But I do think this potentially could be James Franklin's best team in at Penn State since he's been there. We've seen 5-star quarterbacks fall short there before, like in Christian Hackenberg. I believe he was a 5-star and he just didn't pan out the way people expected him to. So that's kind of in the back of my mind a little bit, but I think Drew Aller is going to be pretty solid. They've got 2 really good running backs. The offensive line is a little bit of not a question mark, but I don't know how good is the offensive line. I'm not sure. Defensively, they should be really solid. So I'm kind of in this weird place where I think this is a potential upset win for Michigan State. I think it can be done. I don't expect it. I think being in Ford Field is a little bit of we talked about this when the announcement happened, but you might get a little bit more of a home field advantage just because traditionally and historically Spartan Stadium has not been filled in that last week of the year. And you talked about that when we did the discussion this summer when the game got moved. So you could argue there could be a better home field advantage at Ford Field. We're not sure. Weather can have an interesting impact, but just based on what we expect from both teams this year, I can't call this a win for Michigan State. And so in my scenario, they're at 7-5, but I think it's interesting, Aiden. A month to 2 months ago, as we were, going through the schedule and things like this, certainly after the news with Peyton Thorne and Keon Coleman transferring, we were kind of on that the fence about, can this team make a bowl game? And now here we are on the eve of the season, and we both are fairly. I mean, I got them at 7 wins. You have them at it's at least 7, even without going into the Michigan game.
At 7-4.
So we're both on the side of making a bowl game and not just making a bowl game, but having 7 wins, not just the needed 6. So
Right.
It is interesting how our perspectives have changed over the last week, but I think that's due to, you bring in Alante Brown, the wide receiver, to kind of shore up that room. We've heard good things about Nathan Carter in the running game. Malik Carr, by all accounts, has taken a step forward in fall camp. So a lot of that is what's played into some increased optimism, I guess, from us with that. So we'll call yours 7-4. We'll call mine 7-5. I want to get back to Trevor's comment that he had very early on in the segment. He said, it's that 2023 is a prove it year. We've talked about that. We are in total agreement with that. And to him, 6 losses is a failure, and Tucker's on the hot seat. Let me just throw the scenario at you. Let me just give you my perspective, actually, first, and I'll let you respond to it. 6-6. I think I'm in agreement to a certain extent with Trevor, because it gets you back to a bowl game. But it's just a 1 game improvement from last year. It is an improvement, but you're still wondering, okay, like, where is this going under Tucker? And so people have asked us, even going back to the summer, is Mel Tucker on the hot seat this year? We've both said, no, he's not on the hot seat this year. I do think at 6-6, regardless of what happens in the bowl game, especially if you lose the bowl game, but I think regardless of what happens, the seat certainly heats up, is I guess the point that I'm trying to make going into 2024, if they're 6-6 in this regular season. Your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what those wins and what those losses are. I think
That's fair.
If there's, if the Washington, the Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and one of like Iowa, Minnesota, Maryland, if or 2 of those teams, like if those 6 losses aren't competitive, like similar to last year, I think there is a reason to believe he could be on the hot seat. But I think if he has 6 wins, they make a bowl game, and those games are competitive, or at least 3 or 4 of them are, I don't see a reason for him to be on the hot seat. I think the way he's recruited, I think they just invested millions of dollars into a brand new locker room and facilities. I think the coaching staff is really bought in to this program, and I think a lot of young players are really coming along. I don't see him being on the hot seat anytime soon. I think if they miss a bowl game, I think, yeah, there is a reason to believe he should, be on the hot seat. But I think we cross that bridge when we get there.
Sure.
But at the same time, yeah, I think if there's 6 non-competitive losses, there is an argument to be had. But I think they're still going to compete with, Washington and Maryland and, Michigan and Penn State. So, he's talked about how this has been the deepest team he's had since he's been there. So I think for that reason, there's a lot of cautious optimism. I think I'm very cautiously optimistic that, I don't have to think about them going 6-6. And I think they are good enough to win, 7 or 8 games. So we'll see.
Sure. No, I think like that's well said. I think we don't want to. We're not trying to put out bad vibes about the season. Like, obviously, we're excited about it. We want fans to be excited about it. So we're not trying to kill the mood here. I'm just the scenario was presented by Trevor. So, and I thought it was interesting. Like, where would Michigan State's fan base be if that is the scenario? I do want to say though that, like, just because someone's on the hot seat or their seat is getting warm doesn't necessarily mean that they're on their way of getting fired. It's just that you have to, it's prove it now or you're in trouble type of thing. And again, I don't think he's there right now. The financial investment, both in him and the facilities, as you said, the strength of the schedule, all of that. But eventually you do have to show that things are trending back into the right direction and that your foundation that you've been laying is starting to take some root. And that's what we need to see out of the team this year. And I think if you get to 7 wins, I think you do that. I think you you can go to recruits and say, hey, we're back on the right track. You can help us now go to another level and take it to another level. That's what we got to see this year. All right. I didn't expect that to take 50 minutes to get through that, but it did. So with that, we're going to shift now to our conference predictions. We're going to go through all the major 5. There's still 5 major conferences this year, and then there won't be next year. But we're going to go through each of the major conferences. We're going to give division winners for the Big Ten and SEC. The other 3 conferences, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12, they do not have divisions anymore. They just take the top 2 teams and go to a championship game. So we're going to give you our predictions for that. And then we'll wrap it up with college football playoff predictions. So with that, Aiden, the Big Ten championship game, who wins the East, who wins the West, and who are you crowning as the preseason Big Ten champion?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I think Ohio State is, even last year and the year before, I still felt like Ohio State was the team to beat, and Michigan did that. I really think, no matter who you are, whether you're Alabama, Georgia, even Ohio State and they're in Urban Meyer's prime years, and just Michigan, it's hard to go undefeated, back-to-back seasons in the regular season. And I think that's really gonna factor in with Michigan, and just in terms of my thoughts and kind of how I'm picking this season out. So I think, Michigan is going to drop a loss in there, whether it's to Penn State or Ohio State or whoever. So I have Ohio State winning the East, and I actually have Minnesota winning the West. I think Minnesota is a underrated team. And yeah, I think Wisconsin, obviously the hire of Luke Fickell and kind of changing their offense and everything to be more modern is, a step in the right direction for them. But I still think, they're a year or 2 out just in terms of getting the talent and everything like that. I think Minnesota has the play calling. They may have lost, their 2 or 3 best players, but they still have a lot of that kind of core still there. And I think that's really important. I think Iowa, in terms of offense, just isn't going to be there this season. And, they're really expecting a lot out of 2 transfers, but that doesn't make up for kind of the rest of the 19 other starters or 20 other starters on offense and defense. So I think Minnesota wins that. I think that's a little bit of a surprise pick for a lot of people, but yeah.
No, Minnesota was my pick last year to win the West, and that did not come to fruition. It was Purdue. That is an interesting pick. I wasn't expecting that, to be frank with you. But in the Big Ten West, there's like 5 of the 7 divisions that you'd feel pretty good. Like you could predict and be like, okay, that's understandable. Is for me, I was leaning Iowa actually for the majority of the summer, but this news with Cade McNamara has me really questioning what we're going to see out of them. Now they have a few weeks to, even if he's not ready to go by the start of the year before Big Ten play starts, like maybe he comes back, but I don't feel comfortable picking Iowa given just the uncertainty at quarterback. Quarterback was a horrible position for them last year. Spencer Petras was the best option of the bunch, and he was just really, really bad. And, you can blame Brian Ferentz, the coordinator, for a lot of that, I think, but just a horrible year at quarterback from them last year, and it really scares me. So I'm not going to pick Iowa. I am going to go ahead and go with Wisconsin just because Luke Fickell does have that pedigree with what he did at Cincinnati. I think it's fair to question how quickly he can turn it around, bringing in a new system with Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, a new quarterback and things like that. But is from a group of just teams that you just don't know what to expect, I'll go with the commodity that is Luke Fickell, and go ahead and go with Wisconsin. I think my sneaky pick here would be Illinois. Actually, I think Brett Bielema, what they showed last year at Illinois, I think that's a team who I wouldn't be shocked to see them win the West. So that would be kind of my secondary pick in the West. In the East, it's really interesting because I think there is a very easy scenario where Michigan loses at Penn State loses at Ohio State, and Ohio State loses at Michigan. I really think there's a chance that those three teams could go 1-1 against each other. And then it comes down to tiebreakers. In a tiebreaker scenario, I do like Ohio State's chance the best, because when you go down the different tiebreaker scenarios, it ends up being the three teams you played in the West Division. And I think Ohio State plays the tougher of the three opponents in the West compared to both Michigan and Penn State. So in that scenario, I think Ohio State might get the nod there. My pick, though, is going to be Michigan. I just think, after what we've seen the last 2 years from Michigan, the way that they've handled Ohio State these last 2 seasons, the game's back in Ann Arbor this year. That game at Penn State, I'm really circling because I think that is a very losable game for Michigan. Like we said earlier, I think this is James Franklin, potentially his best team that he's had there. So it's really interesting that I think in order to win the division, I think Michigan has to go unbeaten in conference, and I think that's going to be tough for them to do. At the same time, you do have the quarterback questions at Ohio State with either Kyle McCord or Devin Brown. You do have the questions about their defense, which has struggled to they did better against the run in the first half last year, but in the second half, the dam kind of broke open. So, and with Penn State, it's just James Franklin hasn't proven it to me yet, even with like a lot of talent that he can, I mean, I know he won a Big Ten championship in 2016. They had the upset of Ohio State, but 2016 was 7 years ago. Like, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
For now, I'm going with Michigan. Again, it's kind of a chalk pick, if you will, because they've won it the last 2 years. But until I see something more out of Penn State and Ohio State, for now, I'm going with Michigan. And I'll just continue that with I have Michigan beating Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I have Ohio State winning the Big Ten championship. So yeah.
All right, so we've got Michigan and Ohio State as their Big Ten champion. We'll move on to the SEC, and we'll go a little quicker now that we're out of the Big Ten. This is going to be more of just a pick, why, and we'll move on.
Yeah, so for my divisions, I have, pretty basic, I'd say. Georgia and Alabama. I think Alabama bounces back. Just the talent. I know LSU is kind of a hot pick right now.
Yeah.
But I think they're still too young, and I still think they're developing. And with Alabama playing them at home this year, I think, even if Alabama loses to Texas early in the season, I still think they win that. And then I have Georgia beating Alabama in the SEC championship. I think Georgia really shows kind of how much further they are along, and kind of they're the big dogs in town now.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of along the same lines mindset as you. I did almost go LSU as my West Division winner, but the game being in Tuscaloosa prevents me from doing that. Alabama's quarterback situation, I don't know what we're going to see out of their quarterback. They bring in Tyler Buchner. I was not impressed with him at all while he was at Notre Dame. Jaden Milroe is a super athlete, but accuracy concerns with him. I haven't seen enough of Tyler. Is it Tyler?
Ty Simpson.
Simpson. Yeah, Ty Simpson. I haven't seen enough of him to know what to expect out of him. So that whole situation at quarterback really kind of boggles me a little bit when it comes to Alabama, but I do know that the rest of the roster is loaded as per usual. But I just feel like even more so, like if you look at the recruiting classes that they've stacked these last couple of years, it's just it's just a whole different realm of what we're used to seeing in the Big Ten. Even Ohio State, as good as they've recruited, Alabama is still it seems like in another level. So with that, I'm going to pick Alabama to win the West because they get LSU at home. Georgia's going to march through their schedule. I do think the game at Tennessee has a chance to be a good one, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Georgia lose that, but like I don't expect Georgia to lose that. I think they're going to go unbeaten in the SEC East again. I really weighed this Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game, but again, the questions at quarterback for Alabama concern me, and so I do have Georgia over Alabama in the SEC. We'll move on to the Big 12. And again, no divisions here, so just top two teams go to the championship game. What do you expect?
Yeah, I kind of am drinking the Kool-Aid this year with Texas. So
All
I'm
right.
going I'm
Texas
going
is back.
Texas. Yeah, so I'm going Texas and Kansas State. I think regardless of, like I said earlier, regardless of the Texas Alabama result, because obviously that's non-conference for one last year until Texas moves into the SEC. I think that's going to be, yeah, I think Texas is the best team in the Big 12. I think they have a pretty manageable schedule. I mean, obviously we saw what TCU had last season. It was kind of a miracle run that,
Sure.
has really never been seen before. So yeah, but I think Texas in terms of talent and coaching is where they want to be finally. And, before they get into the gauntlet of the SEC, they have an opportunity to make the playoff really in the Big 12 for the last year.
Yeah, no, when I was kind of getting ready for the show, I was looking at, odds to win the Big 12, and I was looking for every excuse not to pick Texas just because they have underachieved, it seemed like, for the last decade or so. But again, when I look at who's there, and I know the way that Texas has recruited now, they always recruit well, but I like them too. I've got Texas over Kansas State. So we have the same matchup in the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State won it last year. I think that's a solid team returning in Manhattan. But again, Texas it just seems like they have all the ingredients and all the tools necessary. It's just, can you put it together and make it fit together the right way, which, has been a struggle down there for a long time. But I do think this is the year that Steve Sarkisian kind of puts it all together, and Texas gets through a competitive but winnable Big 12 conference. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the ACC. So the ACC is next. Championship game participants and your champion.
Yeah, I think everyone has Florida State and Clemson in some order here. I think Florida State, Florida State and Clemson play each other earlier in the season, and I think it's going to be a split, a season split this year, and I think both of them will have an opportunity to make the playoff, but I think they'll eliminate each other with this split. So I have Florida State winning the ACC championship against Clemson, but having a loss to them earlier in the season, and giving both of those teams will have 2 losses at the end of the year.
Okay. This is kind of like the only championship game where I'm going on a limb a little bit, and that's just with one of the participants. So I have Clemson there. I think they'll beat Florida State at home in week, I think, 4. I like them to get through the ACC as they've done, but I'm actually going to have them match up with Louisville in the ACC championship game. And the only reason why I'm picking Louisville is that they have a very beneficial schedule. So they don't play Clemson in the regular season. They don't play Florida State in the regular season. Their toughest games, they go to NC State. They go to Miami. Those will be tough games in conference. But as far as the top 2 competitors, they miss in Clemson and Florida State. So all they've got, if they only lose one game and Florida State happens to lose to Clemson and just drops one other random game, somewhere in conference. This was kind of my, I didn't want to go chalk the whole way. And so I went with Louisville to match up with Clemson in the ACC championship game. I'll take Clemson to win the ACC though. So you had Florida State winning the conference, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Last but not least, the soon to be dissolved Pac-12. So we'll go Pac-12 championship participants and your champion.
It's kind of funny saying that, because I do think that the Pac-12 will be, I don't think it's the best league, but I think it will be the most competitive league in the country this year. I think there's a legit argument for 6 or 7 teams to win the conference, and I think there's 8 or 9 teams who are pretty good. I think I'm pretty high on Arizona. I like them as an upset team just in general. But I have Oregon and Utah currently
Okay.
in the championship game, and I have Oregon winning that. And I think, Oregon State, Utah, Washington, USC, even UCLA have a chance to compete for the Pac-12 championship. So I think Oregon just has more up front, and then I think they have more talent on the outside to match up better with Utah than they did in previous years. So I think for that reason, I have Oregon winning the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that the Pac-12 is dissolving after this year practically because I said this on a previous pod, it feels like they're finally as a conference getting their act together with USC, returning to prominence. Chip Kelly at UCLA has done a pretty good job down there. Oregon they've been the most, I think, consistent of the Pac-12 teams going back the last 10 to 15 years, but they're still there. Oregon State kind of out of nowhere won 10 games last year. Washington has first it was Chris Peterson while he was there, kind of returned them to respectability, and now with Kalen DeBoer. So right when it seemed like the conference was on the upswing again, it's just going to just evaporate next season, which is unfortunate, but that's just the way things are now. With that, I also have Oregon winning the Pac-12, but I have them beating USC in the Pac-12 championship game. Now, I didn't watch the USC game yesterday, but I heard plenty about the defense once again, and so that does concern me a little bit with USC as it usually does with a Lincoln Riley coached team. And I might have trended towards Washington here a little bit, like even a few weeks ago before the Cam Davis news happened with the running back being out for the season. So, but no, I do like Oregon. I think they've recruited really well. I think Dan Lanning has kind of picked up right where Mario Cristobal left off, and maybe taking it to a new level there. We'll see. We'll kind of find out this year in his second year, but I like Oregon to win the Pac-12 also. So to kind of recap here, my conference champions for the Power Five were Michigan, Georgia, Texas, Clemson, and Oregon. And Aiden's conference champions were Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Florida State, and Oregon. So, Aiden, give me your 4 college football playoff teams.
Yeah, I think in any order, I have Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. So I don't think there will be 2 teams from the Big Ten or the SEC. I think there's a really good case for, an 11-1 Michigan or 11-1 Penn State team to make it into the playoff. But I think, when you look at resumes, I think all those conference champions will have 1 or 2 losses that will, be valued higher than an 11-1 team that didn't make the conference championship and win it.
That's fair. No, I actually looked for ways to get maybe 2 SEC teams, and not that I want that. I'm just because it does seem like the committee does how do I want to put it, value the SEC's schedule and things like that in ways that I don't necessarily agree with, but it has been kind of the trending, the way things have gone in the 4-team playoff era. But again, with LSU going to Alabama, I don't like LSU's chances there. With Bama's quarterback conundrum, I don't see them going 12-0 before the SEC championship game, and if they lose to Georgia, that means a second loss. So I don't know. In my scenario, in my head, I can't fit 2 SEC teams in. So I have Georgia, Michigan, Clemson, and Texas as my 4 playoff teams, which is just kind of wild because I don't know why it's wild, but maybe because Texas is just underachieved. It felt really weird. It felt really weird to pick Texas as a playoff team.
It does.
I think the Big 12 is pretty deep, and I think it's going to be tough to go through even that schedule with 1 loss or less. But again, I was kind of running out of teams to be frank, and so that's who I ended up with as those 4. So who do you have in the bowl games for the playoff, and who do you have moving on to the championship? And go ahead and give me your national champion too.
Okay, I'll just say I think Georgia wins it for
Okay.
a third time. I think they beat for my playoff. I put them against Oregon and Ohio State against Texas. So I think it's Georgia, Ohio State again, another rematch, and I think Georgia wins it, kind of handily as well.
Okay. I've got Georgia beating Texas and Michigan beating Clemson in the playoff, and then I have Georgia beating Michigan in the championship. It feels weird because no team has won 3 national championships in a row, and I think in like, what's it, 40 years or 60 years or something like that.
Time.
It's been a long time. But at the same time, I do feel like this really is a wide open year. It feels like just because of all the quarterback turnover at different places. You know, Georgia's breaking in a new quarterback too. Like that's kind of been, I don't want to say overlooked, but overlooked by us at least tonight. But at the same time, as far as just the roster and the dominance we've seen from Georgia these last couple of years, it just seems like why would you pick anybody else at this point going into the season? Maybe that changes when we get to the playoff, but as of now, based on just what we see on paper, I don't know how you can pick against Georgia right now.
Yeah.
As far as Michigan, we haven't seen them have success in the playoff, and we haven't seen Harbaugh have success in bowl games, and so I didn't even feel great about that pick either. But again, it's just like, who are the options here? Clemson, I'm not even sure will make it there, and so it's one of those crazy things. But I just feel like they have the fewest question marks, I think, of a lot of the contenders. I think Michigan does, so that's kind of why I went with them. So there you have it. There's our full college football preview of the 23 season. Michigan State, obviously, as they should, took up the majority of this, but we wanted to kind of take a glance at the whole country as well. So thank you guys for tuning into a long episode. We'll stick around, I think, for a couple minutes here just to see if you guys have any questions. We'll answer some questions if you have those. But if you do get those in quickly here, and we'll answer those. But if not, we'll call it a night. I don't know if this is a question from Eggplant, but Georgia's quarterback is expected to be Carson Beck this year. Will Jim rise to the occasion? We'll see. It's hard for us to answer that. Specifically, again, if you have any Michigan State questions heading into this last week before we get things going here, do you want to take a shot? You're catching some flack in the comment section for not picking.
Yeah, I mean, I will still refrain from picking that game.
Hey, if you're gonna make that decision, I like that you've stuck to your guns here. Yeah, that you haven't caved to the peer pressure. I respect that at least. I don't respect you dodging the question, but
they'll stay at 7-4. If you think they win that game or lose that game, that's up to you.
So Aiden's letting you project your own and with the rest of his predictions there. As far as starting field goal kicker, it's one of those questions that is so important, and yet it gets overlooked because of just the nature of special teams. We don't have answers as far as who's going to be. I think Jonathan Kim is probably the favorite at this point, the transfer from North Carolina, but Steven Rusnick is somebody who's been, in the program for several years as well. So he can be like, that's kind of the competition at kickers between those guys. And again, a lot of these games, Iowa, Maryland, Minnesota, potentially Nebraska, these games can come down to special teams, and it can come down to making or missing a field goal. And so that's part of why those games are considered 50-50 is we don't have some definitive answers as far as the kicking game for Michigan State. It's interesting. It would be kind of nice. You want to score touchdowns, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see if these situations come up against Central Michigan and Richmond, to see if maybe one of these guys can build some confidence in a game like that, or maybe there's less pressure on those kicks. I don't know. I'm kind of making up a scenario here, but like just you get what I'm saying though, as far as like Michigan State should control those games. Maybe you get a couple 35-yarders, maybe a 45-yarder to kind of get some mojo going with that. The punting situation is kind of interesting too for me, because obviously it was so good last year with Behringer. And we're either going to see a redshirt freshman or a transfer from Ohio State, taking over the punting duties there. Not too many more questions in the comments section here, so I think we'll call it a night. Thank you guys for tuning in. Just to give a PSA, we'll write this down in pencil just because schedules do change at times. This pod that we're doing tonight was supposed to be earlier last week, but with the weather and I moved locations. So I'm in a new apartment now. So like a lot of factors. My car broke down in East Lansing last Monday. So a lot of things happened last week that forced us to push the show back. But pencil in Tuesday night, we're going to dig into the Central Michigan game in a little bit more detail after we hear from Mel Tucker tomorrow, and then a couple assistant coaches and players on Tuesday. So the tentative plan is to have another show Tuesday night to preview the Central game in more detail. Look forward to see you guys then, and thanks again for tuning in.